Then you see, comes in the Tantra what is called the receiving of the Abhisheka, or the initiation of the Abhisthana. With this one enters into the mandala of the deity. Through this process, the deity becomes the student's wisdom. The deity can be like Padmasambhava, could be, for example, Tara or Avalokiteshvara or whatever. The student's wisdom, the embodiment of one's basic being or basic state of mind. Abhisheka literally means anointment or confirmation. The Tibetan, it's called Wankur, which means empowerment. The principle of empowerment is the meeting of the minds of the student and the Vajramaster, which is the product of devotion. Because the student is able to open fully to the teacher is able to communicate directly the power of wakefulness of the Vajrayana through the formal ceremony of Abhisheka. So then if you look, Abhisheka, it's kind of from master to disciple. This is kind of unbroken lineage. Huh? Then comes, you see, the practice of visualization. There are two stages of the visualization practice, called Kerim and Dzogrim, which literally means, Kerim means developing stage, and the Dzogrim means fulfillment stage. Kerim is the process of visualizing the Yidam. In the self-visualization, the practitioner visualizes himself as the Yidam. The visualization rises from the emptiness, from shunyata, as do all the tantric visualizations. Like sometimes it's like this, all the dhammas comprising grasping and fixation becomes empty. From within emptiness rises the source of Dhamma. On that is the nature of one's consciousness, like a fish leaping from the water, rises the body of the deity. So the process of visualizing oneself as the Yidam comes first from the experience of emptiness and egolessness. Out of that rises the source of the Dhammas, the abstract form of the co-emergence. On that the practitioner visualizes himself as the Yidam. That's the mandala. The visualization therefore is essentially an empty. The visualization, therefore is essentially empty as well. The practice of visualization is identifying oneself with the Yidam, realizing the deity realizing the deity as the non-manifested or empty or manifesting basic innate nature, the form of Yidam. Maybe that's enough, I think that's enough. Alright, so that gives you a good grounding. Okay? Now we come to the point of visualization.
When you practice, how do you create the visualization? First, you sit quietly. It's like saying "ah," and you sit quietly. Then, when your mind is really at peace and tranquil, in that state, suddenly there is a jolt or a flash. You wake up to discover your mind is free of ordinary thoughts. Your mind is the wisdom. In that state of wisdom, you assume the confidence, the Vajra pride. It is not ordinary
the pride of the Vajra nature. It's not ordinary.
It is just confidence.
It is not what?
Ordinary pride. It is just confidence, courage, strength which is not fake.
Courage which is authentic, natural courage, yeah?
When our meditation succeeds, we feel in a state of confidence and clarity and oneness with things.
Can you put down a little bit? Because it's like each time you do this, like a gunshot.
But in Tantra, you do not just leave it there. You work with that. You recognize that aspect of your mind as the nature of the deity. For example, in the case of Padmasambhava, you recognize that as his heart and being.
See wisdom as the living heart, that state of the meditative experience, the non-dual state of experience of the unity of what is called the shunyata and compassion, as being the heart and the living heart, the wisdom heart of Padmasambhava, and is the seat from which you generate, you shine forth. Clear? So one must assume that what is called the Vajra nature. And what is important is, whereas in the other practices, like in the Hinayana or the Mahayana, you work with, for example, with the mind to kind of, for example, in the Hinayana, to realizing the egolessness, in Mahayana, developing compassion. But whereas in Tantra, the uniqueness is you go directly and work with your Buddha nature, directly, with your fundamental enlightened seed, and you generate from that.
In Dzogchen, there is actually no visualization at all, no mantra, no meditation. But yet, Dzogchen employs meditation. It utilizes visualization and mantra, but with a special approach, especially in the approach of Anu-yoga. Normally, in other approaches to visualization...
When you talk about Dzogchen, here we're talking about Dzogchen in the context of like the ultimate jnana, the Ati Yoga. Like for example, in the Dzogchen, you see yesterday I explained the three outer tantras, the Kriya, Upa and Yoga. Now then when you come to the Anu-yoga Tantra, you can enter into the realm of the Dzogchen. In that, for example, Maha-yoga is the generative phase of the Dzogchen practice. Anu-yoga is the completion phase of Dzogchen practice. And Ati-yoga is the ultimate non-dual state of great perfection, which is Dzogchen. Okay? So in such an approach of visualization, I mean Dzogchen, in the ultimate state of Dzogchen, like in the Ati Yoga level, there's no visualization, there's no mantra. One simply remains in that state, non-dual state of one's own Rigpa. However, one employs the tantric methods in the Mahayoga and Anu Yoga, in the precedent, the kind of the Dzogchen Tantras, use them in order to arrive at that state. And so the difference is in the tantric practice, the visualization is very kind of chronological, step-by-step process. You create first, you purify everything into the inherent purity of state, and then you create the mandala, the elements, and then, for example, you create the palace, and then with very detailed description, and then the seat of the deity, the principal deity, and then the seat syllable, and you send out the layers of light bringing back blessing, and then the seat just transformed into the deity, and then you begin to visualize each of the different deities which are his manifestations, and so on. So it's kind of quite then you begin to, in the very elaborate practice of Tantra, you begin to visualize even in the different joints of the deity. You begin to visualize different deities, and so on. Like for example, Kala Chakra and all these tantras are extremely intricate to visualize. I mean, there's actually no hope. Whereas in the Dzogchen approach, the visualization is kind of more simpler. That it's what is called Kechi Tenzo. As soon as you think it's complete. And the Dzogchen approach is not so much that one doesn't, you see, normally in visualization there are three principles. The principle of clarity, the principle of solidity, meaning the principle of presence, and the principle of purity, meaning that first you must see clearly the deities. Whatever you visualize, you must see it clearly with your mind's eye. Okay? The second is really the feeling of presence, that actually the deity is there, as the embodiment of enlightenment is there. Thirdly, whatever the attributes, like for example in the case of Vajrasattva, yesterday I mentioned he was wearing all these ornaments which are symbolic of the fact that whatever negative emotions or whatever poisons or whatever passion there are needn't necessarily be abandoned or destroyed, but can be transmuted and worn as ornaments. as nourishment, symbolizing of that fact the different attributes. Like for example, when someone has one deity, I mean in Tantric deity there are many faces also sometimes, which are only symbolic, because there's no guy with many faces, by the way. It's only symbolic. So that when someone has just one face, it means the non-Jew one face. Or one eye is the one eye that sees through 3 times, and so on. There are different meanings to such things. When one has 3 faces, they represent generally the 3 doors of emptiness, or sometimes 3 kayas also. And with eyes too, there are different gazes. One looks up, one looks down, one looks, it's like the 3 kaya gaze. There are many, many like that, which actually Tantra is quite complicated actually. So what did I say all this to start with? Huh? What did I start saying this?
Clarity.
Yes, clarity. See? That's why you have, normally you have paintings and you put them into a mirror here. You have a mirror and you have the painting here, and then you see its reflection and visualize. You look at it, you look at it, and you see, in your mind's eye. That's what Dalai Lama was saying. Actually, the tankas are all objects of visualization, all the tankas. And that's why he was saying once, I think he was giving a teaching in Bodh Gaya, he was saying to all the artists, the Tibetan artists who made a new industry in Kathmandu especially, the tourist art, Hajisar. They sell tourist tankas, which are all hodgepodge. And it's really not, one thing please, this is something that can also save you money, is never buy tankas that look very old, smokedly old. Be careful, make sure that you have actually expert advice, because anything that looks old is actually manufactured, smoked. It's like, it's like you go to Eiffel Tower, you find those little Eiffel Tower effigies, like that. That kind of similar kind of thing is in Nepal. You find many of the tourist tankas which are kind of golden and smoked, and there you find all the deities you like there. Means it's not something not correct, because they don't appear all together. So you get an expert advice, and generally it's better to get something which is new, at least you're sure. And what you look at is the face, how the face is painted. The face is crooked, the eyes are like that or not. What you do is you look at not at the big images. Big images are easier. The small images you must look. Small images, where you small details, and you see whether they accurately painted, the eyes, nose, And in that, wrathful deities are easier to paint, but the peaceful deities are more difficult. So if you see whether tanka is good or not, you look at the peaceful deity and see how peaceful the peaceful face is, if it's not crooked. So anyway, so the Dalai Lama always says that he tells with all the artists that, that don't paint crooked faces, otherwise when you become enlightened, you can become Buddha with a crooked mouth.